really hard for us to save and to balance the checkbook at the end of the month. We need to look at what we all agree on. If you walk around Alamosa, you walk around Monte Vista, people agree on a lot. People agree we have to give tax breaks to small businesses when they're creating jobs. People agree we have to focus on renewable energy, including solar right here in the San Luis Valley. People agree that we have to have good workforce training. We have 2.5 million job postings in America today that aren't being met, not because there aren't jobs available, but because we're not meshing the right workforce training with the available jobs. People agree we have to pass a farm bill. These are all things that people agree on. It's not happening. I'm sure these are things that Congressman Tipton and I agree on, but it's not happening. It's not happening for one reason alone, and that's because too many people back in Washington want to point fingers, want to play games, are too partisan, they create thought there is awful, and instead of working on what we agree on, they seem to focus on everything we disagree on. It's time for a change.
You know, we're supporting legislation right now to be able to eliminate those loopholes. To actually be able to put forward a common sense proposal in terms of tax reform for to be able to make it flatter, fairer, and simpler. Because Americans are suffering right now. This page you'll remember, 2009, we voted for the FASTER bill, which punished rural Colorado more than anyone. When it came to those license plate fees for all of us to drive F-150s, 250s, and 350s. Hurting people were in rural America. Just voted in the last cycle. For the Dirty Dozen, another $200 million in cost. When you go down to the local store, and those plastic spoons cost more, there was more tax. Hurting small businesses, not allowing them in these tough economic times. They will have a little bit of accelerated write-up. We keep that money working, be able to keep people employed. What we're looking at in Washington right now is genuine tax reform. Because as I travel through the 3rd District, I'm talking to moms that when they pull up to that gas pump, they aren't able to fill the whole tank because they still have to be able to buy groceries. I'm talking to senior citizens that are facing that same challenge right now. We've got to be able to get people back to work in this country. Mentioned earlier, legislation we passed through to be able to help achieve that goal. This is a time when we know we need to roll up our sleeves and let Americans do what they do best. That's innovate, create, and produce. That's the legislation we're putting forward.
You mentioned my voting record from the 2010 legislative session when we both served in the State House. You can go back and look at the Colorado Union of Taxpayer scorecard from that year where I was the 3rd highest rated Democrat on their score sheet. I've hardly been a party line vote in my time in the legislature. I've thought for myself, I've represented my constituents, and always tried to do what's best for the people over what's best for my party, what party leaders tell me to do. As far as taxes in general, a bill had been attempted year after year, decades after decades. I put together a bipartisan coalition this year to eliminate the estate tax for farmers and ranchers. Because all too often on paper, farmers and ranchers live land rich, but they're cash poor. And when the bill comes, they have to subdivide in order to keep their farm. Those are the wrong priorities. I'm proud of my record in the legislature. I'm proud to stand up. I'm proud to share it with anyone. And I'm proud to work across the aisle when it's necessary.
Well, in this case, I have something in common. I've also introduced legislation on the federal level, where the heavy hand of the death tax comes into play for our farm and ranch community. The Tax Relief Act for small businesses and farms 2000 crop. So our farms, ranches, and small businesses will be able to continue on after the death of the owner. But we do disagree with that. I've been a small businessman my entire life. That's been my real life, not just politics. And when we did increase taxes with the pasture bill, that hurt farmers and ranchers. That's something small businessmen knows. When you voted for the increase of the dirty dozen, that hurt restaurants and other small businesses as well. Those are real impacts affecting real people when we need to be creating jobs and keeping people at work.
Congressman Dixon, I respect your time as a small business owner. I'm the son of two small business owners. My mom owned a toy store, and my dad owned a car repair shop. In my life, you implied that I've been a career politician or politics my whole life. I've washed dishes, I've waited tables, I've been a maintenance man, I've been a teacher. These are real jobs too. And a lot of people in this room have real jobs. And they're
We'll move on. What's your opinion on the Affordable Care Act? If given the opportunity, would you change it? How and why or why not? And we'll start with you.
And I voted to repeal the President's health care mandate twice. I promised our senior citizens I would stand up for their health care. It strips out $575 billion from Medicare to pay for other portions of the President's health care plan. We just heard just a month ago that they're stripping out $500 million from Health and Human Services, not for Health and Human Services, but in order to be able to hire new IRS agents. I'll tell you, here's the real problem. What we can't all agree on is we need, and what should have been sought, is affordability and accessibility in health care. The President's health care plan fails on both levels. Have your health care costs gone up? If you're a senior citizen, is it easier to find a doctor? It's not. Those costs are going up. Why don't we have, and I'd like Mr. Pace to answer this, will you support tort reform? I do. Will you stand up and let the system actually work? Let's let us buy across state lines. Let's let that free market system actually work. And rather than punishing people for having private medical health care savings accounts, why don't we incentivize that if we truly care about health care in this country? And as I travel the 3rd Congressional District, I've talked to senior citizens that are fearful about finding a doctor. We hear studies right now, just one that came out of the medical group, that 84% of the doctors considering retiring once 2014 gets here and goes into full effect. The number one cause of not hiring in this country, according to the Chamber of Commerce, 74% of the respondents said they're afraid of what it's going to be. When Ms. Pelosi said that once we pass it, we'll find out what's in it, she was accurate, but it is still discovery. We don't know what those costs will continue to be.
Congressman Tipton, you mentioned this $500 billion amount. I heard it a lot 2 years ago when we were running for Congress. This was the $500 billion that was going to be found in efficiencies by getting rid of duplicative programs. Yet, in the Ryan budget, they have that same $500 billion. You stand up here and say that this is wrong and immoral. You voted for it yourself twice in the Ryan budget. You mentioned the repeal votes. According to CBS News, there have been 33 repeal votes at the cost of $50 million to the taxpayers. When did you not get the point? After vote 15, 20, 25? Should you start to catch on that it's more than I don't think the Affordable Care Act is perfect. It isn't perfect in the mandate that we should force people to buy private insurance from a private insurance company. I think there are ways we can improve it. But instead of one repeal vote after another, up to 33, let's sit down. Let's do what we did in Colorado, where we passed a healthcare exchange in a bipartisan fashion with a conservative majority leader in the state house working with Democrats in a bipartisan fashion. I wish we had a little more of that.